Welcome back to the Coach's Car Ride Home. I'm your host, Lauren.
I'm Coach Paul. Hi.
We are so excited to have you back on another week of the podcast. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. If you're new here, I'm Lauren and this is my dad, Paul. We are a father-daughter duo. We coach 14-year-old travel volleyball in South Florida. And we brought this podcast to you guys to bring parents, coaches, and players all together to have more open conversation about the sport, about volleyball. Well, that is the sport.
About what's going on behind the scenes and things you may not see or realize or know.
We missed you guys last week. We were kind of recovering. We had played in Chicago the weekend prior, and it was a very eventful weekend. It was a wild 3 days.
So today we'll talk about recovery.
Yes, so today we will talk about all the things we did to recover over the last week and why it is important to recover after big games, big practices, before games, things like that. So
right now we're driving to practice.
Yeah.
So we have a half-hour ride, so we'll do this podcast on the way to practice.
Yep.
If we don't finish, we'll do it on the way home.
Yep, we are in the car. We are excited. We're headed to practice. We're going to go coach those girls up. So let's get started. So our recap on Chicago. We had the most wild travel experience I think we've ever had. Not only coaching volleyball, it might have been the wildest I've ever had in general.
There was some really bad weather in Chicago, thunderstorms that were rolling in middle of the day, and if you didn't have a 6 a.m. flight, you got stuck or stranded or rerouted, and it seemed like every player on our team was on a different flight, and they all went in all different directions. Some went to Chicago, some went to Indianapolis, some went to St. Louis, some went back home, some went to Fort Lauderdale. We got on the plane and got off, went home and went to bed, got up the next morning and flew as fast as we could to try and get there. Luckily we had an afternoon wave and we made it, and all of our players made it, but not so lucky for other teams in our club. They didn't quite make it. Other
teams and clubs at the tournament as well. You know, we were very fortunate that we had afternoon wave. I think that's the one and only time that I will say that I like having afternoon wave, but there were a lot of teams that had to forfeit their 8 a.m. games because they were still missing so many players that couldn't get there, which is really sad. But
the lesson is, fly early, but in this case it didn't really help because it was a holiday weekend, it was Easter weekend, and our girls all had school Thursday, so they couldn't fly, take the day off and fly. Some of them did, but they couldn't all do that, and so they had to have midday flights, afternoon flights, night flights. We were on a 6 o'clock flight, and then we bumped it to fly standby on like a 3 or 4 o'clock flight, and that got canceled. So things just happened, and it snowballed. And what that led to was not just inconvenience, but players and coaches being extremely tired. Lack of sleep, all that travel, not being able to get there, stress and worry about, am I going to make it? What am I going to do? So all those things lead to probably some of the problems we had over the weekend.
We saw a lot of ups and downs this weekend, a lot of roller coaster rides. We had really great moments and moments where we did not even recognize the players on the court. And having that afternoon wave with a lot of people having the travel issues, not getting in until 3 a.m. that morning, it really did show by our 8 p.m. game that we didn't actually start playing, I think, until probably closer to 9.
Right.
They just crashed out, They had a bunch of energy in the first set. In the second set, you saw it on all their faces. They needed to go to bed and rest and recover. And that, unfortunately, was our big game to keep us in gold, and we missed it just by 5 points.
Well, we won the first set, I think, and then we kind of flamed out
set
after we got tired and lost focus and just couldn't finish. And we went 2-1 the first day, so we stayed in contention for gold, but it put us in the hardest bracket, I think, on day 2 that we have ever seen. We're playing USA, right? So they're pretty good teams, and somehow we wound up with 3 other teams in the bracket that are national level competition teams, maybe even open teams. And we struggled, but actually we played well against these teams. We beat one of them. We beat one of the best teams in the country.
Yep.
And another one we gave a real good run for the money. So, we were within a couple of points, but again, we struggled to stay focused and to recover from errors and to just kind of keep the gas pedal down the whole time.
Yeah. So overall, I think, again, disappointing weekend. We go in with very high hopes that we want to win, we want to come home with a bid, but at the same time, also very proud of our girls. And I think you can have both feelings, in one weekend. We're very proud to see the growth and see the fight that they did show and see them win and, deserve that win against the really good team that we did beat on day 2. And we ended up playing Tampa United in our last game on Sunday before we came home, which is always fun to travel far and play a team that we could have just, could drove a couple hours and played them. But it was nice to see some familiar faces, and, the girls definitely had fun. So
I think the lesson learned was you have to work really hard, and you get what you work for, and you get what you deserve. We didn't play to win, and we didn't, so we finished middle of the pack, and it's a good lesson. So knowing that going forward, we need to work even harder and make every point count so that we have a chance on Sunday.
So let's go into our topic for this week. It's just going to talk a lot about rest and recover. Just why it's important for athletes, especially younger athletes, to take days off, to make sure that they're stretching, to make sure that they're taking care of their body, to make sure that they're getting adequate sleep every single night, especially on tournament weekends, to make sure that, during the summers, if they have months off, that they're being kids. So let's jump in and maybe just ask some questions to each other and go from there.
Right. How much do you think is too much when it comes to playing volleyball? Some kids want to play every waking second of every day. Why is it important to not do that?
So I think this goes all the way back to, choosing one sport. So I think, at a very young age, I was very blessed that my parents put me in every sport possible until I found one or two that I really did enjoy, which can become a lot. It can become you're playing a different sport every single day. If you're playing 2 travel sports, you're away, for both on one same weekend, and it can get kind of hectic and crazy. And, you're asking, when is it too much? Well, I think it's too much when your athlete is complaining of being super tired and being, I don't have time to hang out with my friends, and maybe homework isn't getting done and grades are starting to suffer, and then maybe their performance is also starting to suffer.
Right.
Without that adequate rest and recovery, they cannot perform to their highest ability.
You get some athletes who are the personality, the go type personality, that they just want to do more and do more and do more and be perfect and be the best that they possibly can be, and that drives them to kind of overdo it sometimes.
We love that drive, right? Because that drive in turn makes them one of the best athletes in the gym.
That's the kid that's bumping balls at home every day. That's the kid that's doing exercises, lifting weights, doing all kinds of other things to be better. But sometimes they forget that they might need a day off.
Right.
Schedule a day off, and they might need to make sure they stay hydrated and make sure they get 8 or 9 hours of sleep, a day, especially when they start getting into high school years and have to be at school at 7:30 a.m. or 7 a.m. and they're up at 5:30 or 6, and they want to stay up all night talking to their friends and playing on their phones. That the only thing that's going to suffer is sleep.
Yeah.
Which is really important to athletes' bodies.
You need at least 8 hours of sleep, right? No matter your age, it's if you don't get that, then you're not really functioning on all gears. And so I think, young athletes, they love to stay up and text their friends and be on Snapchat until whatever hour, and then they get up and they have a full day of school, and then they might have an after school activity where it could be a sport, it could not be, and then they go straight from that to practice, and then, back home doing their homework, eating their dinner, back on their Snapchat and on their phone, and they might only be getting 6 hours of sleep, but compiled over a week, a month, couple months, that's really gonna affect how they're playing.
Right. Start slowing down, start risking injuries, start not moving as well, and then their game can suffer too.
Yeah.
They might go from an athlete who's really performing well to one that's sliding towards mediocre, and not knowing what the reason is, and it might be just as simple as sleep and nutrition.
So let me ask you this question. How do you feel, about volleyball turning into a year-round sport? So when I played, we definitely had 2 months off in the summer to kind of be kids, go on family vacation, do
Right.
all of the things. But now we're seeing this sport is becoming year-round, and how do you think that's affecting as well with the burnout?
I think it's too much. I really do, especially at a young age, because when all you do is one thing all the time, you just get so hyper-focused on that you can't really function doing other things. And I've seen athletes who go year-round and play multiple sports or just one sport nonstop, and they get to high school, and their whole goal is to play on that varsity high school team. They achieve that goal, and then they want to throw away the game. They don't want to play in college. They don't want to play again. They kind of quit athletics altogether, go off to college, and start being a kid because they missed being a kid in high school. So
Right.
there's a balance there, and I think it's smart to take a day or two off a week, and I think it's smart to take a month or two off in the summer. Or if you don't want to take off in the summer, do something that you find fun.
Right.
Right? Go play beach volleyball and play it for fun, not
Right.
for competition. Go play once a week, practice once a week, or just practice by messing around with your friends on the beach court if you can't, drag yourself away. But the whole thing now of moving tryouts up earlier and earlier and earlier every year, it's as soon as our season's over, we're trying out for the next season.
Yeah.
And then we're into pre-season training if they're allowed to, and private lessons nonstop, and it can be too much. And I think everybody's afraid, if I don't go year round, I'm gonna lose ground to some of these girls that are going year round.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be the best player on the team or in the gym or in my high school, so I have to dedicate myself 24/7, 365, and it's really not true. You need a good repetitive amount of practice, but you don't need it every single day.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming a little bit too much, and jumping back to tryouts becoming earlier and earlier, it's become this super competitive thing, and our club is making tryouts earlier because that's what all the other clubs are doing.
Right,
And so
we
we
have to
have to
compete.
stay in competition with them because we want the kids to have the opportunity to play at our club instead of committing earlier to somebody else
Being
and
forced to commit
Yeah.
somewhere else and forced to feel like you have to train somewhere all summer long.
Right.
And then they get worried too about, school tryouts are coming up in the end of the summer, so I have to train all summer for that. So it's tough. It really is.
It's super tough, and I think that's where camps come into play. I think it is still keeping them in the sport and keeping them competitive, but it's also allowing them to be kids and go hang out
Do
with their
fun stuff
friends
and travel
and do fun. They stay in the dorms most of the times, and they
Right.
room with their friends, and they
So,
get to go play for 8 hours or whatever it is a day, but then they also get meals together and things like that too. So
right, so
I do think there is the bonus there with camps.
Well, no-
families, if you are going to miss out on a camp to go on a family vacation,
That's what
I
I was
think
just
that's
gonna say.
also very important. Like,
Take
make
the
sure
family vacation.
Yeah, take the family vacation. Bring a volleyball on the family vacation. They can always do reps
or leave
if
it
they
at
really
home.
want to, or leave it at home. Yeah, let them be kids.
Right.
And players, if you're listening to one week off of volleyball is not going to make you forget how
No,
to
it's
play.
going to make you better because your
It's gonna
body's
make
going to
you better.
recover. You're going to feel stronger and more energized when you get back.
Yeah.
And the sport's still going to be there. It's not going anywhere, I promise you.
And your skill is still going to be there. That's also not going to just poof vanish.
Right.
So I think, take that as you will, but make sure that you are taking a lot of rest and recovery, as well as making sure that you're doing fun things that you enjoy over your breaks. So my next question is about recovery. So let's just see what you think is important, maybe during tournaments or during the week when we have tough practices. What are some things that you would think are super important for recovery?
I think nutrition and hydration. I think rest that we talked about already. Stretching, and then just having some downtime to allow your body to heal. I'm older than everybody around us, and it's harder for my body to recover. And I know when I go play beach on a Sunday, I'm shot for the rest of the day sometimes. Or when I go to the gym, it takes longer to recover. So I'm really in tune to listening to your body. Your body will tell you when it feels better and when it's ready to go back to the gym or back to the game or wherever. So just kind of take the time and listen to what your body's telling you. But, you know, stuff like knee pain in a young person or ankle pain in a young person, those are, you know, like red lights.
Right.
If they're telling you they have pain, it's time to step back, because it's only going to get worse. And these repetitive use injuries can gather and grow with time, and then that's not something you're going to want to deal with down the line. You have friends that, and yourself, happened to you through high school and in college. Why don't you talk about that?
I have a very good friend, and she's also a coach. Maybe we'll bring her on sometime, hopefully. She's had back surgery, and we're not even 30 years old, and she had to have back surgery because of the repetitive, you know, jumping and landing. And back when we were younger, you know, when we were 14 years old, there was no such thing as strength training all of your muscles around to preserve your back and preserve your bones and muscles. And so we just overused our back all the time. And I have, you know, 2-3 herniated discs, and it is just usage. And we knew, you know, playing this sport, that it was probably going to happen because of usage. But at the same time, you know, nobody wants that to happen to you. So I think now doing preventative things before we play. So we warm up, we make sure we have the adequate warm up, we make sure we have a cool down, we make sure that we stretch.
Also, you have a couple of friends, high school and college, that had torn ACLs. And that's, we don't know what the cause is. It could be landing wrong or whatever, but it could also be repetitive use, just from years and years of, you know, straining and stretching. They might have little tears and little issues that turn into bigger and bigger issues until something gives way. You
see it a lot with shoulders as well, you know, overusage with shoulders. I have some players that will complain of, oh, my shoulder is tight and my shoulder is sore, and I usually just say, okay, well, why don't you just rest? Why don't you not swing as hard this practice? We make sure that if something's bothering them, that they feel empowered to come and tell us that, because we never, ever, ever want someone to push through the pain and push through something that could cause an overuse injury. You know, it might look like maybe just don't block as much, maybe don't be jumping as much. If you're a player and you have something that's bothering you, whether it's a knee, an ankle, a toe, a finger, something, make sure your parent knows and make sure that your coach knows as well, because you don't want to be overusing it and then it turn into something worse down the line.
Another good thing to think about too is, number one, your parents can get you medical help if you need it, but your coaches, some of them might be actually trainers. We have coaches in our club that are trainers, or you might go to a private coach or someone who's a trainer. Those people have been schooled and trained to help with these type of injuries, preventing and recovering from them. So use those resources. Or at high school, you might have a trainer that's assigned to your athletics department. Use those people, and then when you get to college, you're always going to have a trainer there to make sure that you're in good shape. And then also the ones that are at tournaments, they're there for you as well. They're not your personal medical assistant, but they'll answer your questions, they'll tape you, they'll help you with ice, they'll help you with recovery after a long weekend or a long day. So use all those resources that are available. Don't just suck up the pain and go home when you have things available to help you get back quicker.
If you think about it, I mean, you remember when I was in preseason in college, and even during season, I would text you or call you every day and tell you about the ice bath that I took that day. Or, you know, we had scheduled time to be in the trainer's room before practice, making sure that we're putting the heat packs on our shoulders, or making sure we're getting taped or stretched out or doing some sort of recovery process. And we weren't practicing more than what these kids are doing. So, you know, if they're working just as hard and for just as many hours and in the weight room and all these things, and they're not doing recovery, you're gonna see more injuries and you're gonna see more sore muscles and things like that. Okay, well, let's jump back. You mentioned all the things about what recovery means to you, and you did say something about hydration. I think hydration is not looked at enough. Another really big thing that I took out of playing at the collegiate level was that we had a trainer who would weigh us before and weigh us after practice. Now, this wasn't a weigh-in to see how much we weighed. It was to see how much water we lost in sweat.
Right.
And she had a calculation, I don't remember exactly what it was, but she would tell us, okay, this is how much water you now need to drink to recover from what you lost. And I think, especially living in South Florida, that is something that is so important, because on the weekends, you know, when they are being kids, they're out on the boat, they're out at the beach, they're out at the pool, they're doing stuff outside, they're playing beach volleyball outside, and you lose so much water through your sweat.
Right. And
Not only water, but electrolytes, salt, potassium, all of those things that need to be replenished.
And don't just drink when you're thirsty, drink to recover.
Mm-hmm.
Drink after practice, drink after tournaments, you know, enough water, probably more than you think you need.
Yeah. Add some electrolytes into your water as well. Great supplement to just have a little bit of extra boost into your water. But yeah, I think water hydration, that's a big one. You know, once you feel thirsty, it's already too late. You're already slightly dehydrated. So definitely keep an eye on that. Make sure during water breaks, during practice, you are consuming water. I love the kids that go over and take one sip and come running back, but that is your time to make sure that you're staying hydrated.
Okay, so what about stretching before practice, after practice, before and after tournaments, using a foam roller? What's the best thing? What do they teach you to do?
So, you know, before practice and before games, you see a lot of teams doing these warm-ups, right? They're called dynamic stretching warm-ups, where they're running back and forth to the net and they're doing certain stretch poses. I think sometimes kids and players might take it for granted a little bit. You know, they kind of just go through the motions while they're chatting with their friends, and they're not actually taking it seriously.
There's a reason for it.
But there is a huge reason for it. It's to help get your muscles warmed up, but also stretch them out so that you're not starting to play with tight muscles. And we do lots of gentle reminders. Hey, this is your time to be stretching, like not chatting. And I think that's also important to remind your players of that, because that's going to help you what prevents injury. So the stretching, you want, you know, to elongate your muscles. You want to bring blood flow to your muscles before you start doing high impact training on them. Now, the stretching afterwards is going to do just about the same. It's going to stretch out those muscles that you just used and help you cool down.
Cool down and restore the blood flow, which is the healing part.
Yep, and restore blood flow, but also just making sure that you stay loose, because once you stop playing, you become really tight. And you and I know this as we're older. If we sit down in between, you know, games when we're playing beach and we sit down for more than 5 minutes, we feel like we need a whole nother warm-up.
Right.
Because your body starts to cool down and your muscles get tight again, and that's what you do. So
what about ice after practice or a tournament?
So ice is really good when you have a certain spot that's, you know, either maybe a little bit of overuse or tight. It's going to help inflammation and swelling in that spot. A lot of times players, you'll see them do it on their knees or their ankles or something that's been bothering them, that they're still able to play, but they want to help it recover and not swell after they're done playing. So ice is good. It's good in a limited basis. Like, you don't want to have ice on your ankle and then automatically just jump in and try to start playing without warming your muscles back up. After the full day of playing, ice is okay to minimize swelling, especially if you had maybe a recent ankle injury or something that you want to continue to take care of. The other great recovery tip to do is to foam roll. Now, foam rolling is when you have one of those, I don't know how to explain it, a foam roller, but it looks like a big cylinder, and you'll see people carry them around. Sometimes they're in a smaller size, sometimes they're ribbed, sometimes they're just plain. But what foam rollers do is they roll out the muscles. So if you have any tight spots, or, you know, your hamstrings are tight or something like that, it helps stretch them a little bit more than just your standard stretch. And foam rolling is actually a phenomenal recovery tool for athletes to help their muscles recover faster from when they have maybe a heavy lift or a big practice or something like that.
And then I've seen them, or for a while on our team, the big thing was those massage guns. They all had to have that big massage gun for their shoulders or for their legs.
Those are great too. It's, you know, those are gonna, again, help warm up the muscles, work out the knots. I don't see anything wrong with them. I think they're awesome. So any type of pre or post workout, practice, game,
anything
recovery,
that aids in recovery,
is gonna really be helpful.
All right.
So that's what we have for you this week. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can always email us, comment below. We're always looking for topics, so please give us some that you really want us to talk about. And we are excited. We have our next tournament coming up, not this weekend, but the following at A6.
So we're recovering right now.
We are
and then
recovering.
We're going to start prepping for that and get out there and win some games.
Yep. So thank you. Have a great week.
All right, bye.